On the outskirts of Europe, high up north in the cold Atlantic Ocean, lies a beautiful island. It is known as the Emerald Isle because of its rolling green hills and lush landscapes. It is the home of ancient monuments, some of them thousands of years old, kings and saints, fierce horsemen and glorious battles, skilled poets, and many narratives about them all. This documentary is telling the story of one event that is seldom heard of, but that is still told because the Irish themselves kept it alive and preserved its testimonies. Sultan Abdulmajid Khan was one of the first later sultans of the Ottoman Empire. When he came to power in 1839, he was just 16 years old. But he did not inherit a glorious throne. His once great nation had become the sick man of Europe. Due to the pressure from the outside powers and their ongoing trials of dividing the Ottoman population, the country had begun to fall apart. A process was set into motion that would only 70 years later lead to the complete demise of the empire. Once a strength, the ethnic and religious variety of the Ottoman citizens had become a weakness that allowed the ideas of religious separatism and nationalism to spread and to create conflicts. In the late 18th century, ideologies like Pan-Slavism and Pan-Germanism became more pronounced, and these concepts fueled ambitions of certain groups to break up existing nations and to create new ones. The Ottoman Empire, with its large territorial expansions and multiple ethnic groups, was not spared, and over time it started losing territories in the Balkans and Greece in the west. From within, the empire began to suffer from problems of loyalty and division. The huge administrative institutions, once an invention that had made the Ottomans mighty and organized, had become corrupted and inflated. The Sultan was facing financial, economical, and political crisis. Trying to strengthen his disbanding nation and knowing about the growing power of the European kingdoms of Britain, France, Austria, and Russia, Sultan Abdulmajid Khan tried to approach the British and French to form alliances with them. The Emerald Island named Ireland has seen many arrivals of foreigners over its history. Some tribes have arrived bringing violence, but others had come peacefully. They all had one thing in common. They came to settle and stay with the original people from the island, becoming one population. This completely changed with the arrival of the English in 1171. The Normans came to conquer and occupy Ireland as a part of their empire. This meant for the Irish that from now on they were an occupied nation with a foreign ruler, who did not care much about their well-being, but rather about how best to control them. The Irish rebelled many times against the English, but their population was more and more reduced in the battles, and many unfair laws were passed against them. When the English passed the penal laws, they removed all political and economical power from the Irish. Their land was taken and given to English landowners. The Irish themselves became workers for them, if they could find work at all. When they thought that they had seen the worst, another catastrophe was waiting for them right around the corner. In 1840, the Irish population's main food source was hit by a disastrous disease, which caused many of their potatoes to rot from the inside. The English did not care much about the starving masses of men, women, and children. For them, Ireland was easier to rule, with less Irish to go against their unjust rule. The population in Ireland was desperate. The people had lost their homes and all their possessions in their struggle to feed their families. Many had no place to stay and were out in the cold winter. Most of the shelters were little mud hills turned into huts to use as shelters to sleep in. But many did not even have this. They had to pass their nights in the ditches of the street until they felt sick from malnutrition and eventually died. People started to starve to death, and there are many testimonies of the time witnessing their pain and desperation.
And then they started eating the seaweed, chopping it up and boiling it, and they died with dysentery and black fever and scarlatine fever and yellow fever.
In the winter of 1846-47, you would have seen approximately 8,000 people gathered here, outside the soup kitchen which stands behind me. Now 8,000 people mightn't sound like much, but today when 8,000 people go over there to the football pitch, we say there's a huge crowd in town. Here we're talking about 8,000 starving people coming in for food.
There was one day on the Mealand Road with a cartload of potatoes, and there was a lot of women and kids, begging a few of them, and he was throwing them a few, like here and there, and the landlord caught him. So the landlord put a different man the next day with the cart, his brother Dick. But there was 10 times more people the next day waiting for Dick.
While over 1 million Irish were dying of hunger, the British continued to exploit the harvest of the English landowners of Ireland. It is said in some sources that their exports could have fed up to 18 million people, while only 8 million people were living in Ireland at that time.
About 4,500 miles away, the Turkish Sultan was thinking on how to help the Irish people. He first offered £10,000 to help the Irish people. The English diplomats conveyed that the English Queen had only donated £2,000. This put the Sultan in a very difficult situation. On one hand, he could not embarrass the Queen because he needed to be an ally with Great Britain to protect the Ottoman Empire from Russia, which wanted to conquer parts of it. On the other hand, he felt that he had to help the Irish, who were in great need, while the situation was caused by the British.
The Sultan showed diplomatic wisdom and offered to send £1,000, only half of the already meager sum the Queen was said to have donated. But he knew that this was not enough, and he also knew that the British did not want to help the Irish people. Therefore, he decided to send 5 ships loaded with food and money donations toward Ireland to ease the suffering of the people there.
In 1845, the beginning of the Great Famine of Ireland, the ships approached the Irish ports. The British, however, stopped them from landing in Dublin and tried to block them. So the crew decided to sail up the coast to a smaller port that was less controlled, named Drogheda. They docked the ships there and handed the food to the thankful people of Drogheda. Because of the difficult situation, the generous and courageous act of the Sultan and his sailors got lost in history. The Sultan had no interest to upset the British, and as a Muslim, he had no interest in bragging to the world about his charity. According to the Islamic law of giving, give one hand without the other hand knowing about it, he kept his merciful act a secret. The story of his help to Ireland was not forgotten by the Irish, who received his help when they needed it. After the First World War, during the negotiations of the Treaty of Lausanne, the Ottoman Empire was being dismantled by the Western powers. A former ambassador, Yahya Kemal Beyatli, noticed that while all his allied powers kept voting against Turkey's interests, the Irish representative was an exception. He raised his hand every time in favor of the Turkish. I am obligated to do it, not only I, but all Irish men and women. We suffered from famine and disease. Your Ottoman ancestors shipped loads of food and monetary donations. We have never forgotten the friendly hand extended to us in our difficult times. Your nation deserves to be supported on every occasion. Another testimony to the Sultan's legacy is the account of a Christian priest, Reverend Henry Christmas, in 1853, who commented about the Sultan's act. This is the true spirit of Christianity, and there's more in the Mohammedan Sultan of Turkey than in all the Christian princes of Eastern Europe. It were the Irish themselves who never forgot the kind gesture of the Sultan, who put his co-science before political reasons. They found the official paper of the time that contained a thank you letter to the ruler from the people of Ireland. This letter and the other official documents served as means to trace back the events and lead the plaque of recognition in 1993 on the hotel where the Turkish sailors stayed at the time. The Sultan taught us that with great power comes great responsibility. He had shown to the people of Ireland that they were not forgotten to the rest of mankind in one of the worst times of their history. While he, a responsible leader of his nation, was trying to protect it from any bad consequences, he still insisted on doing what was right by using wisdom and courage.